You're listening to Just Believe, sponsored by Just Believe Recovery Centers, with your host, Brenda Swift, as she discusses all aspects of addiction, recovery, and sober living. And now, your host of Just Believe, Brenda Swift.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Just Believe Radio. I am your host, Brenda Swift, and we are here on the Talk of the Palm Beaches, 900 a.m., 3 p.m., Monday through Saturday. We have a call-in hotline for anyone looking for help or some guidance if anything they hear rings a bell with them as far as needing to get some processes started to find out how to end the pain of what they're going through with addiction and recovery. That number is 877-309-3635. That's 877-309-3635. And I am here today with my guest, John, who's come back and sharing his experience, strength, and hope with us. Hi, John.
Brenda, hello from Atlanta.
Hello from Atlanta. It's a little bit cooler up there now, isn't it?
It's a lot cooler. It's winter. They have winter up here. Real winter.
Oh, wow. And yeah, wind and something below 70. I know. Ooh.
Something below 70 and not just a little breeze. It's actually winter.
And of course, for any of you listening on the internet, we are in South Florida, so we are used to the warmer temperatures. And John was originally from this area as well. We are both in long-term recovery, right at 18 years now. So it's been a nice process of watching people be able to get clean and sober along the way and being able to help and guide through that. What we were going to discuss, I think, a little bit about what the hardest part for me, I think, and the clients that I work with at the different treatment centers that I did work out, was helping them to process the anxiety once they see that alcohol and drugs are bringing things into their lives that they don't want to deal with anymore. Just getting past that point of feeling like you could spontaneously combust thinking about the changes that would happen. Was that part of what you experienced when you realized it was time?
I think it was, and it was one of those things that it just took a while for me to get to the point where I was able to put things into their proper perspective, meaning that it was like I was stark raving sober, and all these feelings and emotions and everything was like coming out sideways, and the only thing I knew was that I didn't want to do this anymore. And that's about all I knew, is I just did not want to do this anymore.
I felt the same thing. I went through many times of stops and starts trying to find a way to end what was going on, what was happening every time I would pick up a drink or a drug. A lot of people are hearing the show, and if they're asking themselves, do I have a problem? Or if any of the emotions that you hear that we're sharing at different times feel like something you're going through. Again, that hotline is 877-309-3635, and that'll give you a chance to talk to somebody just about where you're at and get an idea of whether or not there's something that can stop this process for you. Because what I've seen in all the years that I've been around with recovery is that it doesn't get any better. Once you start to see those things change, like you talk about, John, that invisible line, once you go past that invisible line, it only gets worse from there. And it's not anything that continuing on the same path is going to give you other than the jail, institution, death, and that is unfortunately where we inevitably end up. How did you stop the process when all the anxiety came up for you, John?
Well, I went to people that honestly made the process look simple. They had been doing the sobriety thing for a while, and so I would pick their brain. I would stop trying to figure it out, simply because every time I did, it would just increase the level of anxiety. I would just literally just kind of spinning like a top, and just finding people that were actually successful at not drinking, not drugging, not feeding their addiction was paramount in this whole process. Because, and I've said it before, to use my brain to try to fix my brain was a death sentence, and I began to understand that, and that too increased the anxiety, realizing that I really didn't know what to do, and it was a bizarre position to be in because I wasn't numbing it anymore, and there was the change, but there was the uncomfortability of being in a place that I just haven't known for a long time, which was not drinking.
Absolutely. I know that they talked about in the beginning that my best thinking got me here. And that was the truth. I tried, 5,000 different ways to keep from hitting that brick wall that I would end up hitting every time. Not every time that I would drink or drug. There were successful periods that lasted a time or two. But without warning, I would, go to do the same thing I did the last time and was able to stop at 3 or 4 drinks. And before I knew it, the sun's coming up and there's other types of substances involved. And it was just, getting ugly and things started to happen from there. But that was the very best plans I had each time, that I would eat before I would go out. I would pace myself. I would make sure somebody was driving, and all these things to try to keep from getting into more problems and more trouble as time went on. Just kept failing over and over again and getting worse and worse.
So imagine that you're at that place, and all of a sudden now, for whatever reason, you reach that spot where you're just done. You're not going to do it anymore. You're done, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, now what? And like, what's next? I've never been here before. Somebody tell me what to do, kind of a thing. And I mean, at that stage, I would, if it was doing the old habit and the old me, I would just simply numb it. I would get into a drink or a drug, and that would just take care of whatever anxiety I had. Now all of a sudden, I didn't have that crutch to fall back on. Now what? And that was where I really needed to get help. And fortunately, it was there. It was there, and through that process, it was one of those things that I learned. Probably one of the most valuable lessons is don't feel like a freak show because you don't drink. You don't know anybody that doesn't drink simply because that's not who you used to hang around, and that part was very true. So, these people that knew about recovery would slowly just kind of bring me off of the ledge. They would, just kind of talk me down from all this anxiety. Just said, you know what, you're going to be okay. Don't worry about it. There's a lot of people who've gone through this stuff and everything, and what you're going through right now is not going to. It's not going to kill you. What you were doing was going to kill you, but what you're feeling right now is just a feeling, and you're going to be okay. So it took a lot of reinforcement and a lot of help there, but they were right. There was a solution. The solution was just to continue on whether I wanted to or not.
And that was actually what I realized. I went into treatment. I couldn't do it myself in everyday life with all the triggers and all the things that consistently ended the same. That was one of the first things they told me, though, that I guess I felt stupid that I didn't really realize that it was the case, but that feelings will not kill me. And I had never, ever considered that. I would get the feeling and I would be off and running, finding a way to numb it up, whether it was, drugs, anything, even shopping and, all the different ways of just numbing out and finding a different way to get rid of what we were feeling. For those of you just joining us, we are at Just Believe Radio. This is Brenda. I am your host, and I have John on the line. We are discussing dealing with the emotions and anxiety that come along with knowing that it's time to get help and stop the process that's going on that keeps ending in worse and worse consequences to do with drugs and alcohol. So at that point, then you were involved in the 12-step program, and
yes,
that's where you found the help.
Absolutely, and through that program and through that process, I began to understand a great many things. My particular path was a 12-step program. There was a lot of treatment available out there as well. There was just something to fit everybody, And that was the beauty of it, is the ability to find that. And it was a good match. It was a real good match. And so the thing is that to understand one thing very, very clearly, I could not fix me. That my ideas and my concepts are the things that got me into trouble, and it certainly wasn't going to be the solution.
No, and that is so mind-boggling to us while it's going on, because we think we got ourselves into this, so we should certainly be able to figure out a way to get ourselves out of it. But like we talk about, our best thinking over and over again keeps getting us to the same place, and we almost don't see it coming. It happens over a period of time to where, we're starting to see bills are piling up, we're late for work, we're losing jobs. But most of all for me was that feeling when I would wake up in the morning and look at myself and just not like who I saw anymore and know that something needed to change, but not having the power to change it. And that's when, when I went into treatment, that was what started to become clear through the counselors, is that the alcohol and the drugs, that was actually a way of trying to numb up other things that were going on with me that I didn't realize, that the alcohol and drugs were just a symptom of the underlying issues. And that's why treatment helped me so much, and I think has helped so many other people. We do need to take a quick break, and John's going to share his experience on this when we come back in just a moment.
At Just Believe Recovery Center, their highly trained staff has a combined 50 years in recovery and is certified to help with each client's individual needs. The program at Just Believe Recovery Center brings those suffering from addiction and their families the understanding needed to begin healing from the devastation and begin the path to a new and fulfilling life in recovery. The staff understands what addiction has done to your family and that no one chooses to become sick. At Just Believe Recovery Center, with a therapeutic process and a caring staff that understands addiction, their clients can choose to become well. Go to justbelieveradio.com for more details and call their 24-hour hotline today, 877-309-3635. That's 877-309-3635 for caring guidance and an end to the pain of addiction now. Just believe there is another chance and call 877-309-3635 today.
Welcome back to Just Believe, sponsored by Just Believe Recovery Centers, with your host, Brenda Swift, as she discusses all aspects of addiction, recovery, and sober living. Now, back to your host, Brenda Swift.
And we're back. I'm Brenda, your host. This is Just Believe Radio, and we have John from Atlanta on the line. John was going to give us some information on how things started to change for him and getting into the solution of how recovery works. So you still there, John?
I am still here.
How did...
And,
oh.
Well, and that's the thing. The whole process was pretty foreign, but necessary. I mean, here's the thing that kind of stands out to me. I'm looking back in the 18 years, and it sounds like a long time, and it is a long time, but it isn't a long time. Meaning that I realized that I was doing something I'd never done before. I wasn't sure if I really wanted to do it, but it was just simply that I did not want to live a life of addiction. I didn't want to die that way. I didn't want to live that way. But I wasn't sure how to get there, and I put myself in the hands of people that knew how to do it, who honestly made it look easy. And why? Because they were doing it. They were living this life, and I wasn't, and I wanted it. And so it was a matter of just hang on to my seat and hang on for the ride, because it was quite a ride. Yes, the anxiety was huge, but at the same token, it wasn't, because I knew it was going to be okay. Somehow, some way, I knew it was going to be all right. That other people had gone through this, and I was just another one.
Yeah, I liked what you shared there. It reminded me a lot of how many times I tried to stop on my own, and that isolation and that devastating loneliness that went along with knowing something was really wrong with me, that I was doing these things against my own will, and swearing over and over again I was going to change it, and being completely unable to do that, and things just kept getting worse and worse. So trying to do this on my own just increased that loneliness and that hole in your soul that you can drive a truck through that's so enormous and overpowering. I didn't realize until I had gone to treatment and they took me into the meetings and the counselors and this group of people that were doing the same thing, that I didn't have to do it alone. I didn't have to stay locked in areas where, I thought nobody would know how sick I was, like they didn't already know, But the realization that it doesn't have to be all by yourself was such a gift for me. And it's, truly changed my life in the things that I've been able to do to help other people to realize the same thing.
Well, that's the thing. I realized that I was surrounded by people that knew what they were doing, and I didn't. And it was, I just had given up. At that point in time, I wasn't even trying to do it myself, because I just thought about all the attempts that I had made to, I'll never do this again, and I'll never do that again, just to do it again and again and again. So I'd reached that point where I was saying, all right, I think I've just exhausted every possibility of doing this drinking and drugging career successfully, and it's not working out. And so we're past all that now. So now we're into the whole how do you live a sober life? How do you live a life free of addiction and have fun and have a life? And I had all these weird concepts of just kind of sitting in the corner in a chair for the rest of my life, not having any kind of fun or anything. And that's been totally the opposite of what's happened. But just getting me over that hump was the real trick, and sticking with it was the other part.
I agree. And anyone that is looking for help, you're listening to Just Believe Radio. We do have a hotline that has some very patient and informed people that can help you to get an idea of what you might be able to start on, whether it's just starting to see these issues that we're talking about, or experiencing the same feelings that John and I are both mentioning. That number is 877-309-3635. And that was along the lines of what you were just sharing. I remember that moment so clearly of seeing that everything, again, my best efforts got me to the place where everything was falling apart. And I couldn't dance fast enough to stay ahead of it anymore. And the relief, that came along with the first few days, surrounded by people that could help, wanted to help, and were there to help. That was just an entire contrast for me after just slowly but surely abandoning the people in my life because I was so ashamed of everything that I was doing along the way.
Well, that's addiction, isn't it? I mean, it puts us in the situations that we would never rationally go into. And I think it's worth pointing out here is that I'm a self-taught engineer. I've done all sorts of bizarre communication stuff. I've got a long career in broadcasting and broadcast engineering. Worked with some of the biggest networks around the country. They flew me everywhere. I can take things apart and dissect it down to the nth degree, the whole bit. I mean, I really enjoy what I do, but I couldn't figure out how not to kill myself with drinking and drugging. I couldn't figure it out. I could figure all this other stuff out, but I couldn't figure this out. And so that was the point I really wanted to make, is that, I finally realized that part, and it was like, okay, smart guy, why don't you go get information and listen to other people that know how to do this thing, because you don't know how to. And once I reached that point and everything, things really started to calm down. The anxiety went away, and I turned into this sponge just absorbing all this information.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because a good portion of us that have addiction problems are very intelligent, are very accomplished, have been able to set out and do things. Of course, generally don't like to be told what to do along the way, so we figure it out ourselves. I'm self-taught on most everything I've done as well. And that's part of it is our own, we find out it's ego that tells us that we don't have to listen to anybody else, that we know, how to do this, and then finding out once we actually get help that doesn't have to be how we operate. We don't have to. We don't always know everything, And one of the counselors in treatment had actually said, I was telling her, according to me, what things should be like. And yes, and she looked at me and says, Brenda, what makes you think that you're the one that's always right? And that I was dumbfounded. It really hadn't occurred to me that I didn't have the answer, because I was always thinking things through, dissecting and analyzing and making sure that I had everybody's thoughts and interests at heart. And by the time I would actually voice something, I thought I had given it as much thought as anybody needed to have the right answer. But it didn't occur to me until I got there that I didn't have any answers on how to stop this process with me. And all of the answers I came up with failed miserably. And here I was, my life was pretty much, everything I'd built was gone. And there wasn't anything that in my own head, heart, or otherwise that I could come up with that was going to fix it. So the learning how to be around people that are doing the same thing and have the same freedom and joy that recovery brings is really a phenomenal process. And I'm so grateful for it and blessed that's been part of my life. And my daughter's grown up in that. And friends like you that are a blessing as well. It's just really been quite a process.
Well, the thing that I'd like to convey, and I think this is like just the crux of the matter, is that if I try to apply rational thought to addiction, which is a completely irrational act, I am really setting myself up, because to try to figure this thing out is just one of those things that I can't. Looking back, it's like, why did I do the things that I did? How did this happen? Blah, 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 blah. I could go on and on and on. But the reality of it is that instead of trying to figure out why it happened, just to realize it did happen, that it's insane, it makes no sense at all, and where do we go from here? And I think that's kind of where we're at. It's like, you call that number and you start sounding it out with people that really know what they're doing, and that's the key. Might not be ready for anything, but it never hurts to make a phone call and kind of find out what's going on. Is this something that I need to be concerned with? Is this in my life, or is this in somebody's life that I know?
And that's a really good point, is just actually starting to let the thoughts and the pain in your head come out of your mouth. Just actually hearing yourself say some of the things start to make sense of where the issue might be, whether it's a problem that needs, like you said, help right now, or just becoming aware of it and having the courage to start talking about it starts us in the solution. It starts to move things forward. We're not staying stuck in the same pattern over and over and over again that always seems to end the same. If you're feeling any of the things that we're talking about here, our number for the hotline is 877-309-3635, and that is somebody that will be able to talk to you, give you some feedback on where you might need to go from here. We are about 2 minutes left of the show. If you could basically tell anyone what comes after recovery in 2 minutes or less, John, what would you share with them?
Sky's the limit. I finally realized that the only limits there are the ones that I put in myself. And once I got free from the bondage of addiction, then anything and everything was possible. I was no longer limited by my own insanity.
That's wonderful. It made me think of going from that place of not being able to trust anything I said to actually, learning to be a person of my word again, and having people know that I was going to show up where I said I was going to, and actually have the chance to help other people to learn the same process along the way. It's been quite a path of seeing all the things that led to alcohol and drugs getting out of control. And prior to any of the treatment or the program for me, it was always never understanding why I was doing what I was doing. And we are about out of time. I am Brenda, your host, Just Believe Radio. We are here on 900 AM, the Talk of the Palm Beaches, Monday through Saturday at 3 p.m. And again, that hotline for anyone that is really just having some ideas that they might need to talk to somebody, it helps enormously. That is 877-309-3635. 3635. And if addiction is starting to steal your life away, just believe there is another chance.